All right, so good morning once again. So this is the, the website we have built so far, combining the two languages we are still dealing with, which are the HTML, the CSS so far. I know I have built homepage, which is the page I am right now, and I've also built the shopping page or the shop page. So let me see what I have under my About Us. We are here to build About Us page. We are also yet to build the gallery page. Again, contact page is also yet to be built. Well, like I give us an assignment to complete all the pages because you can actually use the same concept that I've used so far to develop these two pages, to develop those pages as well, right? So I've taught us how to design form when we were still mastering tags. So which means that in your contact page, you can actually integrate your form. And then in your gallery, it's just a display of work you have done or uh, your products images. So this morning we are still on CSS and HTML anyway. We still have few things to complete or to conclude before we bring in JavaScript. Well, hopefully we will enter JavaScript soon. That is why I want to appeal to us to take our assignment very serious, because that assignment will make you to initialize or to register all that we have done on HTML and CSS, which are the requirements for learning JavaScript. So we are looking at CSS animation. That is one part that we have not touched so far, CSS animation. How many of us have heard of the term CSS animation before now? Just give me 1 minute. I was asking before, how many of us have heard of CSS animation before now? Can anybody respond to that, please, if you are with me?
I've not heard about it too.
Okay, so let me just create my About Us page, then I will practice some of these animation effects there. Let me just create about HTML. Right. So said we are focusing on CSS animation. Now, if you have visited a lot of websites or some professional websites, almost every website we have today, one way or the other, has some animation in it or added to some of its elements. So when we say animation in computing generally, we are talking about effects that makes objects to move. to move. So sometimes we can easily say that animations are motion. So we can say they are motion effects. They are certain CSS properties that we use in making objects a kind of, dynamic or interactive to an extent. So if you look at this, the front page I opened before, all these images has been stagnated since I opened them. Now we want to make the site more interactive with the users. So, and at the same time, I want to make it a little bit more entertaining. That is where you bring in the concept of CSS animation. What do I mean by that? So we want a situation whereby when the user gets here, at least either at the point of entry, some of these images we move some kind of animation, or they will move, and then before they will now fall back to the static position, or after 5 seconds when the person has successfully logged into this website. That is when maybe this image will now take another shape. It could be tests. Maybe at the point of entry, this text will slide in, or after you have logged in, then this text can start zooming in. So equivalent to what we are talking about is like the hover effect that we have been using since some time. Most of these CSS animation are usually added through hover effect. That is when the users uh, click or touch an object. That is when the effects will be triggered. So in nutshell, what we are saying is that animations are effects that makes your HTML elements to possess certain movement or certain motion. So we can look at CSS animation in two perspectives, and I'm going to start with the basic. So I believe this class and next class, I should be able to round up this animation topic so that we can start planning entering JavaScript probably next week. So I'm going to start with the elementary CSS animation, which we refer to them as transform. So CSS transform. This is where you start learning animation from. And transition. So this is where you start learning your animation. These ones are basic, but at the same time, when you manipulate them professionally, can give you some very good animation. So I'm going to start with the transform. The transform. So CSS transform allow you to manipulate elements. CSS transform allows you to manipulate elements. Are you with me? Appearance and position. So you can see the keyword here are appearance and position. Please, just 1 second. So like I was saying, this transform, the transform, I said it allows you to manipulate and manipulate element appearance and position. So there are two key things it focuses on: the appearance of the element and the positioning. So that is where we will end up deriving some effects from. Okay, so you can apply various transformation to an HTML element through the transform. Looking at the word transform, it means something is changing its state from one to another. So depending on how you program it. So let's quickly look at an example. Let's look at an example. So if we are looking at an example here, let me take this off first and activate my HTML basic file. And then let me put my comments here. Let's see if we... Okay. So an example, I have an element, let's say div, and this div in my CSS, let me use internal CSS so that we can be seeing most of the things we'll be doing at the same time. So this element, the first thing I want to do, I want to add width to it. I want to add width. And before that, let me class the element. Let me class it transform. Let me class it transform, just to indicate what we are doing. So I could just come here and do dot transform. Open my CSS calling bracket. So let me just give it some width so that it will act as a container. So you can actually use an image, but I just want to start with a basic HTML element. Let's give it width of 400 ps. So any element you are adding this transform or transition on must have their actual appearance first. There should be a way they should look at before the effect. So you don't just start adding the effect. To an extent, style it with your normal CSS. Let it look well. Let it look presentable before you start thinking of adding effect or motion to it. So that's why I'm doing all this. At this point, I have not started applying any form of the CSS transformation effect. So let me also give it a background color. Let's give it, let's say blue. So let's go to the front end and see what we have coded so far. So I have this as my element that I want to transform. Now don't forget the emphasis of the transformation property is to change the appearance and also the position. That is the focus of this transform. Now this transform has about 4 different values. That is, under transform, we can have transform translates. We can have transform we can have transform rotates. We can have also transform. We can have transform skew. We can have, I think I've mentioned, to transform, translate, transform, rotate, transform, skew. There is one more. Okay, transform scale. There's still additional. Transform scale. So each of them, they are like sub values that can be used alongside with the transform CSS property. So we are going to practice some of them, or if not all, because once you have an idea of one, then you definitely know how to apply the other. They are very simple to learn with the basic CSS you have learned so far. So I'm going to start with transform translate. translate. So basically, the transform translate is when your focus is on changing the width of that element. That is, by default, the element has been programmed to display 400 pixels by 400 pixels. Then, what will now be the effect? The effect is that it will have another width. So what we are saying is that there are times that instead of using things like width like this, you can simply use translate to width your elements. So where we are driving to now is that I may not want to use this. Let me comment them temporarily. Let me comment them temporarily. So if you look at the elements now, let's check what we have there before. You know, we have opened it somewhere. Okay, let me just open again to be sure of what we are doing. Okay, you can see that why we are not seeing it because we have removed the width of that element. So now let's add the transform translate property. So if I say transform, you see that once you type that main element, you will see the transform, rotate, transform, rotate, transform, scale, or the pattern I'm talking about, transform, scale, transform, translate. So I can click on this one. So depending, but at the moment translating, we are trying to change the appearance. That is, we are focusing on width. So I can say what? 400 PS. Now that 400 PS is the height. Then if you space, you are not putting comma, or let's say you put comma, then you do 500 PS. So if I go back to the object now, let's go back to the front end. Do this. Let me just allow this width so that we can see. I hope that's easy. Okay, so you can see what happened. It changed the position. Remember I said the focus is on the position. So what you are seeing this space here, this is like the 400, this is the 500. So that is what we're actually achieving with margin when we were doing normal basic CSS. Because this aspect of CSS we are in now is referred to as advanced CSS. And sometimes we refer to it as CSS 3.0. So the other CSS we have been learning since, except few of them that we borrow like border readers and the rest of them, they falls under CSS 2.0. So the one you are learning now is CSS 3.0, which is recognized as the advanced CSS. And in this advanced CSS, we start with the basic of the advanced, which is the transform and the transition. So the transform is about changing the location, the position of the object. So if I may just do some other arrangement, or let's say we further transform that object. So I want to transform it, that is from the left hand side, I want to move it to 30 PS. So if I go back to the page now, you see that what? I have moved it back. That is what I will have used margin left, then I'll keep reducing the value for me to bring it here. So if I want to move the object horizontally, then I will use what? Transform, translate, knowing that the first value is coordinating left and right, while this value coordinating top and bottom. So I can just put 50 here and then go back to the page. You can see it. This is what you will have also achieved with margin top and margin bottom. So an advanced CSS user can decide not to be using margin whenever he or she want to move certain object. There are times that it is faster and better depending on individual interests. Some persons will rely on the CSS margin and